Good morning. I'm Charlotte Jones, co-host of the John Telford Detroit Show, coming to you every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock on WJZZ Cool TV. Also streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Dr. John Telford is a former Detroit Public Schools superintendent, a former world-class athlete, conqueror of Olympic champions, a championship track coach, poet, newspaper columnist, a longtime civil rights crusader, and author of 7 books: Creative Insubordination, What Old Men Know, The Will Robinson Story, The Poetic Prancings of Mad John, The Poet Emperor of Earth, and his explosive autobiography, A Life on the Run, plus another upcoming poetry book, Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs, a Detroit poetic epic. His books are available on Amazon.com or by calling 313-460-8272. That's 313-460-8272. Dr. Telford has been called a legend and also a lightning rod for controversy, a recipient of the City Council's Spirit of Detroit Award and the Joe Louis Foundation's Spirit of the Champ Award. He was named Wayne State University's Alumnus of the Year, and a Detroit track is named for him. His email is drjohntelfordedd@aol.com. That's dr.johntelfordedd@aol.com. Dr. Telford also has a show on WCHB AM 1340 that airs on Saturdays at 9:30 in the morning and Mondays at 6:30 in the evening. That's on WCHB AM 1340, Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. and Mondays at 6:30 p.m. And now, without further ado, I present to you that old native Detroiter, the one and only Dr. John Telford.
Thank you, Charlotte Jones, author of A Ain't Always for Apple. A Ain't Always for Apple, an erotic adult alphabet book. My name is Detroit. I'm a blue-collar town. Blue salt melts my mid-March snow. Speedy cars and sprinters spring from me. I father fierce fighters and funky music. In a Motown moment, I can spit the blues right back in a bureaucrat's eye. Have you never seen blue salt? No complex chemistry here, only the old color of a new sky. And there's a new sky dawning on Detroit today because we are interviewing Marcellus Higgs on the John Telford Detroit Show today. Charlotte Jones and I, Char J and I are interviewing Marcellus Higgs.
Welcome.
But before we do that, I've got a couple things that I want to say. I'm a little sleepy today because I've been up with some folks that are calling ourselves the concerned folks at the River House, because our board and our administration at the River House, the board particularly, they just don't seem to get it. There's some new folks there, but I have an extreme worry that they're trying to take our home away, which has been happening all along that Gold Coast. You know, that Gold Coast on the Detroit River. You know, people are putting people out. You know, in fact, I wrote a poem, you know, called Urban Renewal. I think it was in one of the recent downtown Detroit monitors, as was my poem Blue Salt. I think that's the one that's on the stands today. But this is what's happening. And so I didn't get much sleep last night. And I also was upset by the fact that my son, Steve Telford, called me yesterday crying. He's 57 years old, and he was crying. I was never married to his mother. Beautiful blue-eyed blonde, Corinna Ditta was her name. And his name was Steve Ditta until he found out he was my son and took the blood test and took my name. But his mother died. She just died, and he was crying.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that hit me like a ton of bricks, because I loved that lady, even though I was not married to her. And also, 2 years ago, my beloved Adrian, my third wife, passed of cancer that wasn't detected. She had MS, and we thought that she'd outlive me. But I am here 2 years after her death, and I outlived her. There must be some reason why I'm still here. And also my second wife, Gina, beautiful African American lady, used to be a airline stewardess. She is suffering from some health problems as well. She's had a couple of operations. It's under this context that I'm trying to do this show today, but we are very honored to have Marcellus Higgs with us today because he has written a sequel to the book that we advertised on the show several weeks ago called Ape Man Rex. So Marcellus, welcome to the John Telford Detroit Show.
Thank you for having me back.
Well, hey, I wouldn't have missed it. And I got a poem here that I call "The Values of Verse," which reminds me of some of my guests and certainly of you. And the values of verse goes like this: verse comes to us by pen or voice. We thus can always take our choice. Let me be also sure to mention that verse will gain us righteous vengeance via deft poetic arts that can topple oligarchs. Verse will clearly, plainly lay out what we poets dare to say out, like gentle mewling lambs no more, but rather with a fearsome roar as from some cacophonic corps of lions. And we've got a young lion in the studio today in the person of Marcellus Higgs, author of now Ape Man Rex 2. Ape Man Rex 2. And we're going to be talking about this book today and how it came about to having been written with Marcellus Higgs, who is sitting in the studio right across from me. So Marcellus, you just released the sequel to Ape Man Rex. What is Ape Man Rex 2 about?
Well, Ape Man Rex 2 actually picks up from where the last book left off. In the last book, they ended up defeating this gigantic robot that runs the world that he found himself in. In this book, he and his friends have to do some solution dealing with there's a glitch, but it's kind of like a disease that infiltrates the robots, and he has to find a way to get rid of the glitch so it doesn't go too far. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, you make it sound very fascinating.
Thank you.
You young guys are writing some good stuff.
Thank you.
I mean, you're half a century younger than me. I'm 87. I'm glad to see that young folks like you are keeping up the good fight to keep people reading.
Yeah.
To keep people, not just watching TV or listening to rap music or something, but actually reading. I've been very upset with the Detroit Public Schools recently because they haven't been teaching our kids to read. And our third graders are coming out of the third grade not able to read, and that's been happening now for the past 6 or 7 years, maybe even longer, which is one of the reasons why I'm pushing the current school board. I ran for the school board, and I didn't get elected because I didn't spend the $250,000 that the incumbent board spent to get back in to do nothing for 4 more years, unless they will see the error of their ways now and recognize that these kids can't read. And we'll be talking a lot more about that on WCHB and WJZZ and DETIP TV and all the channels I'm on. I'm hitting them as hard as I can to get them to finally get in a reading program that will that works.
Right. What age group again? Is this
8
one?
and up,
8
so
and up.
3rd grade and
Right.
up. Yeah.
That's the target age group for Marcellus Higgs' book.
So when you were here last time, did you got this out quick? Is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, I had written this a while ago.
Okay.
And I had planned for a March release anyway. But the first book had come out like in 2019. So, yeah.
Okay.
But I wrote this in 2020, actually.
Because I don't remember if you said it was coming out or I don't remember.
Yeah.
So, but I'm like, you did that really quick. So, yeah. So you say for 8 years old, would an adult enjoy it as well?
Oh, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, anyone who likes escapism, who likes a good story, a little bit of fantasy, I like to mix some weight in there with the fluff so
Yeah.
that adults have something to rely on, not just something that the children can get into. So everybody has a level of interest in this story. The kids will probably grow up and find there was something deeper there, but the adults can sense it while they're reading it with the kids. And
Do
so.
they need to read 1 before they read 2?
Probably, yeah. I set this up like a well-oiled saga.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you kind of need to know a little bit before.
You know, Keith Owens is doing fantasy stuff now.
Yeah, I know Keith. Keith is
Yeah,
cool.
well, he's my man. You know,
He's really cool.
Way back with Keith. But are you going to do something? And what's that bookstore in Hamtramck?
Book Suey.
Book Suey. You going to do something there?
Yeah, I want to. I'm
Yeah.
gonna reach out to the guy who owns the place, ask if I could do something there, because we had a good time. In August or July, that's where I first met Dr. Telford.
I came there and heard you read.
Yeah, Book Suey. I had a story in the Detroit Stories Quarterly, that edition, and we were doing a little small reading.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got to have Keith back on the show, and you got to have his wife back on the show. But what inspired 8 Man Rex 2, Marcellus? What inspired it?
Well, honestly, I had originally planned on writing this story about a robotic kind of outbreak before the pandemic, but after March 2020 happened, no one had anything to do. I said, let me write. And this was the next book on my list to write.
I think
And
a lot of people did a lot of stuff during pandemic.
Yeah. So it was kind of like that just motivated me. But also because we were all going through that, I wanted to write something where the ending was good, but it was somehow allegorical to our situation. I didn't really want to write about what was really, really happening. It was
Right.
too close to home. So having it a science fiction sort of robotic outbreak, and then knowing the ending was going to be good, I wanted to give people some catharsis, some relief. So that was really the inspiration behind it all.
Okay, well, that was a good inspiration. And allegorical in the sense that it relates in some way to the
Exactly.
pandemic that we recently suffered and could very well
Yeah,
have to go through again.
exactly.
Okay, I think it's time for a
Nope.
station break. isn't
Nope,
it?
we
No?
don't do those anymore at the 15, at the 30 and the 45. He just told us that.
Oh, did he? I didn't hear him say. Well, you know, he tells me stuff when I'm distracted, so we're not doing station breaks
Not
anymore.
at the not as many. So
Not as many.
I got it. I got us. You do your part. I'll do the rest.
How many are we doing?
2.
Okay. Okay. Well, you do your part. What is it? Two then.
Yeah, 2.
Just two.
I got us.
Okay. 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 Well, then let's continue to interview Marcellus. And you sent me some questions, Marcellus, and one of them was you wanted us to ask. You got the questions too.
Yeah, I
believe.
have 'em.
Yeah. Are sequels? This is a sequel. 8 Man Rex 2 is definitely a sequel.
Yeah.
And are sequels easier or harder to write in your experience?
This was a little bit more difficult than I thought it would be because I wanted it to be a bit deeper and go a bit further. This was about expanding the world that I already created with the first book. So I really had to make sure that I had extra details that I didn't have in
Right.
the first one. I fleshed out the characters more. I made sure it moved more. smoothly and, consistently. So that was a bit more of a difficulty, but at the same time, I think it was probably more fun because it allowed me to have to think a bit differently and a bit deeper in that aspect.
So you had to follow the story from the first book. You have to stay consistent.
Yep.
And then what you're saying is you took, like, let's just say one of your characters, you introduced their mother or their childhood or something like that, or, how they became like that. So you went deeper. And I would think that would be a little bit harder. A little bit.
Yeah, and plus I introduced a whole new character.
Right, new people.
So it just changed the dynamic, and you have to make sure that they have a real personality, especially when you're writing smaller books for kids. It's harder to get their personalities more, grounded, because it's really going through more like how they speak and maybe a movement they have. You can't go on these long descriptive paragraphs like you might do in a bigger novel or something to give people. So you do have to make sure, just by maybe a turn of a phrase, that people know who this kind of person is.
What age group do you see this book for?
8 and up.
Readership. Say it again.
8 and up.
8 and up.
Yep.
Okay. 8 and up. All right. Second grade.
Yep.
Okay. You got a question, honey?
Just how did you decide which scenes to illustrate, that type of thing?
Well, with the first book, I was just trying to establish just what everything looked like. With this one, I wanted to, again, bring people more into the world. So I tried to think of different angles, different viewpoints. I kind of looked at it from a cinematic standpoint, like if this were a movie, how would it look from this angle or that angle? So you have kind of wider shots, you have more close-ups. You
did the illustrations yourself?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I did. Now that I did pretty
This guy's
quickly
an
from the
artist
last
and
time.
an author. All right.
Yeah.
You say
yeah.
you did it. You did do that pretty quickly.
Yeah, from the last time I came here. That was the part I hadn't done yet, the illustrations.
Where'd you get this printed?
I use Amazon.
Okay.
Their direct publishing. Okay. Yep. It's very
Made in the USA.
Yep.
So
and I just put the cover together. I did the art and stuff. So.
Okay. You do the art. I don't do art. I don't do art. I can't do that. So
this book here was published by Detroit Inc. This is my first poetry book.
I have a copy of that.
Yeah, I got a second one coming out. It's called Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs.
Okay.
Detroit Poetic Epic, and I think it's gonna get some folks mad when they see it, but that's
always good.
Yeah.
I mean, a little controversy.
Never heard it. All publicity is good publicity.
And polarization is good. People have to get a little riled up to see what they feel about stuff sometimes.
Yeah, all publicity is good publicity unless your name's Donald Trump.
Yeah. So you said you thought of this like from a movie standpoint. Is that what you said? So explain what you mean by that.
Well, I actually watched like really big movie trilogies and sagas that people know, like Star Wars, Godfather, Alien stuff, just because I'm like, yeah, it's a kid's book, but I want this to have some weight. I want kids to feel like they have a trilogy, a saga that is talking to them in a respectful way, not like down, not babyish. So I was like, let me watch these more adult, kind of movies and get an idea of how this could work and how it could look. Especially with the illustrations, I just feel like it can't just be a boring portrait shot. For me, I'm always thinking about an angle, how it looks, and where it's coming from.
Because kids don't like to be talked down to, and I'm thinking of this for my grandson. He's 7, but he's very smart, and holding a conversation with him, you wouldn't think that, you're looking down, it's like, okay, this kid's only 7.
Right.
But, he's having a real conversation.
Right.
And he's making some valid points.
Right.
So you don't want to talk down to them at all.
Right.
And I think they appreciate that. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just think of what I liked when I was younger, how I liked when there was stuff that wasn't talking down to me.
Right.
And I'm like, some people get older, they forget that yes, kids are kids, but they are also little people and they don't see themselves as just little kids. So you have to kind of think of how they might see themselves. They want to have something where you give them more respect, more, dignity.
Right.
And that's where I came with this trilogy. Well, now it's just the first and second, but the trilogy. That's how I came with it.
But you say trilogy, that means you working on it.
Yeah.
Speak
got
it.
got a third book in the offing.
Yep.
There are many styles of writing, and what style do you practice, or what style is your favorite style, or what style do you follow in your writing style?
I like a lot of simplicity, to be honest. I mean, I really just like direct to the point stuff. I used to love really deep description. I really used to love a lot of stream of consciousness, which is still good, but my whole aim is getting to the reader. And most readers aren't English class taught or literary educated, so they just like a direct story. And I like that directness too. That's why I like Aesop fables or fairy tales by Hans Christian Andersen or something. It's just, this is the story, you can feel it, and that's it. So simplicity for me is probably like my favorite kind of style.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I have my style is writing poetically.
Right.
I mean, I've written seven books,
Mm-hmm.
and some of them were fiction, and some were nonfiction.
Right.
But also another thing you mentioned that kind of struck me. You mentioned that you enjoy writing. I never really thought about it, from that standpoint. But every now and then a poem will pop into my head, and then I enjoy putting it down, particularly if it's got political leanings.
Right.
I write a lot of political stuff, but let's get
Let me
back.
ask both of you this.
Yeah,
When you think
yeah,
of something
yeah.
and it's the middle of the night, do you get up and write it down, or you say, I'm going to think about it, I'm going to remember? Because I never remember anything I thought about at 3 in the morning. Like, what was that thought? So do you get up and write it?
Yeah, I use my phone.
And just talk. That's what I do now.
Yeah.
I just talk to it and it'll make a note.
I do a voice note, or I either actually just go to notes and jot down whatever. It's like a one loose idea. Because
Right.
I'm like, I know I'm going to forget it. I've done that so many times where like, you'll remember it when you get
No, you
up.
won't.
And I'm like, what was
What
that
was
idea? And then I have nothing. So now I just pick
And it
up
was
my
so
phone.
profound when you
Yes.
thought of it at 3 in the morning,
Yeah,
but you can't remember.
exactly.
What do you do, John? You get up and write it. He's not using his phone. So you get up and write it down?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Because what happens, particularly at 87, if I have an idea in my head and I don't get it on paper immediately, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll say, "What was that?" Yeah, you've got to do it when it hits you.
Exactly.
Particularly when it comes to poems.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And some of my poems are two-liners, a couplet. Some of them, take a whole page or two, but some of them are just a couplet. And sometimes the two-liners are the ones that are the deepest,
Mm-hmm.
But you got to get that on paper immediately.
Yeah.
And I do write in the middle of the night. I'll wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, because old men go to the bathroom about 5 times a night. So all of a sudden an idea hits me in my head, and I go into my office and grab a pen and write it down real fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember what I was thinking in the morning, because if I don't do that, I'm mad at myself all day and trying to remember, what that great
You never remember it the same as when you thought of it at 3 in the morning. So
No.
it's like, that was not how it went.
Right.
Not at all.
So,
It's interesting because you're talking about 8 Man Rex II being part of a trilogy.
Yeah.
What about making it 4 or 5 or 10? Are you going to run out of material? Or?
Well, one thing about it is I just like a limited series where it's just finite, and you can't really do too much to change. I think these days there's a lot of how much can we get from this property and take from it. So I kind of was like, it's going to be 3 books and that's it. Plus I have other things I just want to do and put out. And I feel like I have so many books already done, and I just need to get them out that if I spend all my time with 8-Man, what would I do?
But you never know. You know, your third grader who reads this book might be a fourth grader wanting to read the third book, a fifth grader who want to read the fifth book.
I've got an inventory of books for kids.
And just keep your readership as they grow up.
Right.
You know?
No, that's actually the plan.
Okay.
Get all their little money.
Well, I would like to get everyone from every age group, you know, just something. There's always for me going to be something for, you know, if the younger brother has this book, maybe his older sister has this one, and maybe their mom has that one, and maybe even the grandmother has one book, you know, I want to, and then maybe they're all reading the same thing at the same time. So my whole thing is I want everyone to read at some point. Just if everyone had their own kind of stuff, that would be good.
And you can appeal to parents and grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and they will buy this book and read it to their son and daughter or their grandson
and they would like it too.
Yeah,
honestly.
Right. Well, okay. You mentioned in the questions that you sent me that you're filming a new YouTube series.
Yep.
And the YouTube series that you're filming is, you're calling it Marsorama.
Yep,
Marsorama.
Yep.
Tell us about this YouTube series.
Marsorama came about from an idea of wanting to give people a behind-the-scenes view of writers' lives. I felt like, you know, we live in an era with reality TV, obviously, and people are always getting, you know, you see veterinarians, you see, you know, nursing students, you see Lego builders, you know, and I felt like, why isn't there anything about writers or literary people?
Right, because there is no so you think you can write.
Exactly.
And there's no outlet for them. So you think you can dance, so you think you can sing, but no, so you think you can write. So
exactly. And I'm like, okay, maybe sometimes watching someone type isn't going to be the most fascinating thing, but there's a lot more that goes into that. So for me, it's like, let's make something that, you know, has a, you know, a better perspective, a better background on writers' lives.
That's a good idea, because I've always said that. And then they wouldn't want to watch me because I'm sitting in the middle of the bed. I've got the laptop on the pillow. I've got the popcorn. I've got the TV on. And that's how I write. So they don't want to see that. I'm in my pajamas. You know?
But it's real. That's the thing. And I think a lot of people don't really know. They think a lot of writers are at Starbucks or
at their desk. We don't do that.
They don't have a real perspective. We see a lot of, you know, how movies are made, albums are made. People know what a studio looks like, a recording studio or a set. They have no idea a lot about writers in that way. There's not a lot of intimacy. So with this, I'm like, let's pull off the veil as much as myself as I can give to people without going too far, but showing them a process.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that's true. I say that all the time. There's so many things for a talented singer to get out there, but there's nothing for a talented writer to get out there and show how they do their creative process or how they get a book or whatever. So that's an interesting concept that you're putting forth. So. And
it's so important that our kids just have basic literacy. That's been one of my major crusades. You know, when I was superintendent of schools in a couple of districts, that was my crusade, and certainly in Detroit, you know, when I was serving pro bono as superintendent of schools, I wanted to make sure that our kids, good Lord, that they could read. And unfortunately, I did not succeed in that regard because I had an emergency financial mismanager that fought me at every turn. That was back in 2012 and 2013. And he later said he was wrong. You know, he said, hey, man, they put me in here to turn out the lights, and I just didn't realize it. But we're still fighting that battle. And, you know, after I was superintendent, I became poet in residence. for the Detroit Public Schools, and I go around to the high schools reading my poetry, and I have a poetry class that I team teach with one of my good friends, Tim Moore, who was with me at Finney High several years ago, and unfortunately, the school is Frederick Douglass Academy. That's over on West Warren, where I do my poetry, and teach my poetry. And Frederick Douglass, I've never forgot this. I like to quote him a lot because he said, "Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave."
Let me do this. You're watching WJZZ Cool TV, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like us, follow us, share us, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. That's a profound statement. Knowledge makes a man unfit.
Yeah, well, and our kids, we teach them in grades 1, 2, and 3, and also reading readiness, kindergarten. We teach them in grades 1, 2, and 3 to learn to read. But once they come out of the 3rd grade, they go into the 4th grade, they are reading to learn.
Yeah.
And if they haven't been equipped to do that, they are doomed for the rest of their lives.
Let me stop you. Do you have any announcements?
Do I have any announcements?
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably do, and I'm glad that you reminded me, so I can do it.
Right. That's my job.
Yeah,
That's my job.
Yes, it is. And you always get me when I forget something. And I didn't sleep well last night, so I could very easily have forgotten this because I've been up with V. Starkey and other members of this committee at the River House to try to save it from being taken over by malevolent forces. Okay. Miss Virginia Starkey, fondly known simply as V, the proprietress of V's Boutique, offers a wide range of fine clothing and accessories for ladies. You can find all sizes of women's fine apparel in V's one-stop excellent customer service at V's Boutique that you can't find anywhere else in Detroit anymore. V's is at 16423 East Warren Avenue. That's right around the corner from the old Alger Theater and from one of the few libraries that is still open in the city of Detroit. We've got to get a few more of them reopened.
Well, there's a new bookstore next door to her, too, and we're going to try to get them on as a guest. And this lovely necklace came from V's.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah.
And if you want to make an appointment to go to V's and see some of that fine apparel and purchase some of it, you can call her at 313... No, I always do that. You can call her at 248-662-6622. That's 248-662-6622. V's Fine Apparel.
You do that because she has 2 phones. That's why you do that. The other one is a 313.
That's right. that is correct.
She has 2 phones.
Yep. But we are interviewing Marcellus Higgs, young author Marcellus Higgs, author of Ape Man Rex 1, 2, and soon to be 3. And I think there should be 4 and 5. But maybe I'm wrong about that. But you've got this filming now, this YouTube series.
Yes.
And what inspired you to do that?
Really, just growing up, actually watching reality TV. As I mentioned, I'm that generation that it was kind of prevalent. It was always around. And in the 90s and early 2000s, MTV did a lot of like behind the scenes kind of shows like Diary, Biorhythm, and like behind making the video and stuff like that. So for me,
VH1 behind the music.
Yeah, behind the music. So getting all of this background, these, this insight on how musicians and other people's lives were. I was just like, again, what about writers? What about, you never saw any of those. So honestly, I thought, What if there was a reality show that, what if James Baldwin had one? What if Walt Whitman had one?
Stephen King, I would love to know.
What if Rimbaud or Baudelaire had one? Getting these writers, especially the ones that have dynamic personalities, I feel like we kind of live in a time where people don't even realize that there have been a lot of writers who weren't just stuffy and just sitting in an office, that were romantic, seductive, sexual people, attractive, bold, destructive sometimes,
Stuff we go to. Your computer crashes. You lose your I wasted a whole cup of tea in my computer. So just imagine if you'd have been filming that, because it was, oh, shit!
Exactly, right. I mean,
tea was down in my crotch, and it was... You would have got some good footage that day, so I do understand.
I just want to show that real side, and even some of a fun side, something a little different than what we're used to when it comes to when people say the word writer and what they really visualize,
It's not what you think, trust me.
Yeah.
If we could reincarnate Ernest Hemingway, I would look to have him do the show.
Yeah, I mean,
like that.
He would be one of those people where you'd want to follow his exploits and his adventures and the things he did.
See, I would wanted to be Shakespeare.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Talking about the Bard.
Right,
I mean, everything has emanated from him.
Because he was deep. He was saying some stuff.
I love that he was saying things, but his stuff was so
eloquent.
Eloquent, but the plays are really entertainment, and a lot of people forget that he was mixing well-written verse with mass entertainment. I mean, Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Macbeth, all those would be soap operas in today's day.
Oh yeah,
That's
right.
That's why it's written so well.
That's why Bridgerton is so popular.
Yeah,
because that's probably what it was like. Based on today's standards, and that they was doing the same thing. It was just they had on fancier clothes.
Exactly. And the further we always get removed from history, the more refined we think of it, and less like our daily lives. Even though in Shakespeare's time, his plays were for prostitutes and drunks and people like that. They were the ones going to the theater.
That's right.
Yeah.
They came to the globe.
Yeah, exactly.
Julius Caesar. I mean, the evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar.
It is the Ides of March today, too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It is the Ides of March. And my poem, Blue Salt's about March, too. But, the evil that men do lives after them, and that is so true. And I don't know how long Trump's going to be with us. I mean, if he chokes on a cheeseburger tomorrow, he might not be with us anymore. But the evil that man has done is living after him. It will live after him. It's living today. And I guess this brings about the necessity for me quoting the poem that I never get to quote in its entirety at the end of this show, because I always start to quote it too late. So I'm gonna quote it right now.
Okay.
And I call it Uncivil Warfare. And when I wrote it on January the 6th, 2021.
Wow.
What happened on that day?
That crazy attack.
That's right. And the subtitle of this poem is more apropos, perhaps, because I call it The Turd That Hasn't Flushed. On this evil and fatal occasion of the Capitol building invasion, the traitor Trump's collusion demands his execution. God yet hasn't pushed the lever on the traitor Trump forever. And when God does, and this isn't part of the poem, when God does, it's to be hoped that the lever is the lever of the gas chamber or the electric chair. But you know what? If it's not, I would at least be satisfied, as would 65-70% of the American people, if the lever were that of Leavenworth Prison. Because this guy, I cannot believe, I mean, he has legitimized racism, anti-Semitism, you name it. I mean, he's legitimized it. You know, people just, they're coming out from under rocks and saying these things, you know, in open public discourse. Jews will not replace us. Jews will not replace us. You remember those guys? I mean, they're out there. And now we've got a House of Representatives that is being dominated by these folks. Our country's in trouble, and if we journalists don't continue to speak out and tell the truth, I don't know what's taking Merrick Garland so long to indict Trump.
All right, you're going on a.
Yeah, I'm going on
You
a
don't
diatribe.
have any of your poetry books with you, but can you got something off the top of your head you wanna?
I can't recite that. I have something on my phone I could look for.
Go ahead.
Right.
This is your show. I'm trying to take it over.
Right.
It's your show.
So, yeah, give us something real quick. You know, you're a poet. Don't come here. You got your little poet hookup on, all black, ominous sunglasses. You're about to spit some verse. Come on now. So, John, you looking for something else to read?
Well, I got my poetry book here.
My poetry is too radical, so I don't.
Well, radical's what I'm looking for,
No,
Char.
not mine. You people be talking, how dare she say that?
No, this is a place where you can say it. You know, we can't say it on WCHB. You know, I can't curse on WCHB. You can say anything you want on WJZZ.
Well, this is a poem I wrote. It's based off of the trip that Mary Shelley and her husband and Byron took in Switzerland at Villa Diodati in like 1816. It was a really weird summer filled of cold weather, and they were staying in the house, and that's where she came up with Frankenstein. And actually, Byron's assistant wrote about him, calling it the vampire, which ended up inspiring Bram Stoker for Dracula. So this was a very momentous trip. Yeah, and this is just basically as if I were them there, in this weird setting and where everything is kind of crazy.
Okay.
The night is young, but so are we. The lightning does nothing but sets me free. Come take my hand and feel no pain. Let us strip right down and dance in the rain. Have you your bottle of absinthe drink? 5 more shots, then another not to think. Conjure your magic and cast all your spells. Kiss me at midnight with stories to tell. Chase me within the great castle's walls. Feed me your mushrooms so that I may fall. Remind me of monsters and creatures unknown. Scare me so deeply I cannot be alone. The thunder is heavy, but not like my head. You remind me of all of the books that I've read. More super than natural, more sublime than never. I wish we could stay here like this forever.
That's a beautiful, well-written poem.
Thank you.
You got another one?
Sure, yeah.
So, well, we've got a few minutes. He's going to look for that, and we're going to we still want to finish talking about Marsorama, because it seems like something very interesting. So,
you can ask me about that if you want.
What do you want people to take away from that? Just like the experience of writing, or?
Yeah, I want them to see writers differently. I want people to see us as just people. Like, for example, the first episode was just an intro. The second one I just put out on last Friday was about how 8-Man Rex came to be. And this third one I'm doing is about my personal style, clothing-wise. Because I feel like a lot of writers, no one really talks about them caring about the way they look and their own personal style. But even Whitman, he wore loose work shirts to be considered the everyday man. Terry McMillan wore lots of jewelry when she first came out, very big, ornate styles. Fitzgerald, he had his whole 20s style. Françoise Sagan, a French writer from the 50s, she had a bohemian style with big turtleneck sweaters and shorts and stuff. I mean, writers have their own thing going on a lot of the time, but it's not really talked about. Like, we talk about an actor's style. Even athletes now are, when they come into the arena, people are looking at what outfits they're wearing now.
Yeah.
And stuff. But at the same time, I feel like it's a necessary thing in this day and age for some people to help them be attracted and into stuff. Sometimes you need the shimmer to get people in for extra stuff. And because writing is often seen as on the blander, not so interesting side, you kind of have to have something just to bring in those people who aren't into all that other stuff.
Because you're doing it alone, so...
Yeah, exactly.
You're watching the Dr. John Telford Detroit Show, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. So, what are you working on next? And then you need to tell people how to get to that, to your show.
I'm gonna be putting out 8-Man Rex 3 maybe later on this year. Okay. It's already been written. It was written actually maybe a month after I wrote this one in 2020. I wrote 6 books that year, all children's books, so they weren't that big, but...
Did you write coinciding? Like, can you write a couple of lines from this and then switch over to 3?
No.
Okay, you have to finish that first.
But because I outlined them so extensively, it only took like a few days to write the initial drafts for each of them, so it wasn't much. I spaced them out for some weeks.
Okay.
But other than that, I'm just working on Marzorama. It's on YouTube. Every Friday, I put out an episode at 12 p.m., and they range for size of time, but it's just, a little insight.
So what are we looking for on YouTube?
You can just put in Marzorama,
okay.
Or you can search my name, Saint Marcellus. That's the name of my channel.
Spell that out.
SaintMarsallis.
And how about spell that?
Marzorama is Marsorama, like Cinerama and stuff like that. That's kind of where I got the...
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So go on YouTube. You got the Marsorama. You got the books. You've got Apex Rex Man.
Yeah.
8-Man Rex 2.
Well, if you read it fast, it does look like that. So
I don't have my glasses today, so you might get anything from me today. The series, the Monster, and you said how long are you going to do that? Like, is that going to be?
I guess as long as I can before I run out of ideas. I kind of made a list of things I want to talk about. I want to talk about writers' lives. I want to talk about my favorite literary characters, my favorite books. Talk about unknown, underrepresented writers and stuff. So it's whenever I run out of ideas, basically.
All right, John, you have anything real quick?
Yeah, well, I just want to read this blurb that's on the back of 8-Man Rex. In the continuing saga of 8-Man Rex, a dangerous glitch has poisoned the entire robot population. As he and his friends search for a solution, they are joined by the arrival of the free-spirited Ape Girl. Ape Girl. Wow.
All right. Well.
And I haven't read this second book yet. Yet after one of them is infected, the gang must race against time to stop the virus before it's too late.
Thank you for joining us. That's
Thank
going
you.
to do it for us.
This was great.
You've been listening to the John Telford Detroit Show with Dr. John Telford and co-host Charlotte Jones on WJZZ Detroit Internet Television, coming to you live every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. Also streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Contact Dr. Telford at 313-460-8272. That's 313-460-8272. Or at Dr. John Telford, EDD, at AOL.com. That's DrJohnTelford, EDD, at AOL.com. To sponsor or appear on this show, or to get signed copies of his book, which Hill Perkins, Jeffrey Feiger, and Dr. Wayne Dyer all call spellbinding and sensational. It was the late, great Dr. Wayne Dyer who said, Dr. John Telford has a warrior's heart and a poet's soul. Read Dr. Telford's commentaries on the schools and other vital topics in the Telford Telescope column in the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. And also hear him on his other station, WCHB AM 1340, every Saturday morning at 9:30 and Monday evening at 6:30. That's every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. and Monday evening at 6:30 p.m. on WCHB AM 1340. Tune in again next Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock to the John Telford Detroit Show here on WJZZ Cool TV with Dr. Telford and co-host Charlotte Jones.